When it's classic Mission Impossible, the stunts, the countdown is going down. It's down to the wire. No pun intended. That's when it's classic Mission Impossible. That's when it feels amazing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to No Drama, Just Movies, and we are back this week with another movie review. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned with all the content that we produce each and every week in the world of TV and movies. My name is Cameron. Tom Cruise has perfected the art of running, Kelly Smith, and I am joined by my esteemed colleague here.
He had a lot of practice. I'm Phil Disavowed Corwin.
Oh, that's right. If you haven't guessed it by now, but of course you would have based on the title of this video. Here we are here to review none other than the final entry in the obviously highly acclaimed Mission Impossible franchise. We are here to review none other than Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, which is part 2 to obviously the previous movie, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. But here we are with the Final Reckoning. So, I mean, this is a storied franchise. It's been going on for a long time, even prior to the Tom Cruise iteration, obviously. But this Tom Cruise iteration of Mission Impossible has, of course, been going on since... When did it even start? I couldn't even tell you the year that it started.
1990s, I think.
That would make sense. That would make sense. And here we are, all these years later, Tom Cruise still looking young with the dyed hair. He can still run. He's still got a good physique. Maybe no Botox, maybe. But here we are. Anyway, Final Reckoning. What was your thoughts coming out of this movie, having seen it tonight?
The expectations were a bit higher because it's the final one. You know, you'd think they would like bring everything to the table, but I felt a little bit slow at points. Especially at the beginning, and yeah, good stunts, but the story was a bit not always there.
Yeah, I mean, this movie does feel like an event. It's been promoted as one. It is kind of kicking off the summer season. Well, obviously, Thunderbolts kind of did that, but this kind of feels like it's now kicking us off again. It's presented as an event. We obviously watched it in IMAX. Amazing format, especially to witness some of these stunts in. Yeah, this movie does suffer from a lot. I think it does suffer from a less compelling story. It's very long. This movie is 2 hours and 50 minutes. And for a movie that can really fill that time and make it beautiful and exciting and make you feel like you're not in there for 3 hours, tremendous. This movie does feel like you're in there for 3 hours. It does have some beautiful moments. The stunts and the action. When it's peak Mission Impossible, that's when it shines. But this movie did feel like one where I feel like this is, in comparison to some of the last few movies, I feel like this personally is one of the least best. It's on the lower scale for me. I think that Dead Reckoning was better. I think Ghost Protocol was better. I think a few of the last ones were better. And sure, yeah, this one does have some great stunts, and we'll get onto that in a minute. And some great action sequences, but dare I say, it's a bit boring at times. And that's a shame. And I think if you're not watching this movie in a premium format, or at least in a good screen, I think it may even suffer a little bit. I think the fact that we was watching in IMAX did help. But go into more of your thoughts. Well, what was more of the takeaway with this one?
Let's jump on the negative, because let's get that out of the way.
There's a lot.
Focus more on the point.
Right.
The boring. Let's start with the boring. It was. My theory is, I think it's because it spends a lot of time recapping stuff and like expositioning stuff, and I know that's kind of a little bit what Mission Impossible does. There's always this kind of beginning exposition, right? Here's the case, here's the mission, here are all the people involved, and now go and do it, right? But that's pretty much where that ends. And here we had like recaps of the previous film and that. And what didn't help for me was that it like spliced the editing, basically spliced in like scenes from the previous films. And as they were mentioned or something. And for me, that like took me out of the film, and I wonder if it's made it feel longer because you're not always in it. It's always like you're in the film, you're back out, now you're in a completely different film, the previous film or whatever, or you're looking at a clip show of the previous films, and now you're back in. So you're almost watching more than one, and you like, I don't know how exactly to describe it, but yeah, it
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I couldn't help but think that Final Reckoning and obviously the previous one, Dead Reckoning, could have just been one movie. I honestly felt after I rewatched Dead Reckoning back in January, and I was like, "Oh, I'm intrigued to see how they wrap up this story, specifically the whole story between Ethan and Gabriel, which very much felt like the heart of Dead Reckoning. And I feel like it was not paid off well here. It felt cartoony at times. In Dead Reckoning, when Gabriel kills off Rebecca Ferguson's character, who's a love interest to Ethan, you feel this sense of, you really want Ethan to get his comeuppance. You want him to really kill Gabriel. Like it doesn't feel like it pays off here. It feels like their story takes a back seat and it's kind of woven in with what once again in Dead Reckoning started with this interesting idea of the entity and AI, and it could have maybe have been an interesting kind of commentary on obviously present day. I say commentary, this is Mission Impossible we're talking about, but it could have been something interesting, but it just turns into something what I feel is very sci-fi, and you kind of I didn't really feel necessarily the stakes. And plus as well, that Ethan's going to succeed, right? And I think that not at one point was they able to successfully convince me that maybe, just maybe, he could be F'd here. Also, as well, like we talk
Can I
about.
jump on
So go ahead.
that before we
Yeah,
go
go
to
on.
the next point? I do think it had a kind of a villain problem. Like you mentioned the AI, the entity, and Gabriel. Like I do remember from from Dead Reckoning, just some moments where the AI was like impersonating Benji, so for example, or like showing them where you couldn't trust what you were seeing.
Yeah.
And it didn't do that a lot in this. It just messed with the nuclear stockpiles a little bit, which was not enough, I think, to make it a real threat. Like I would have liked a little bit more, like throughout the entity messing with just like all the electronics. Like how do you communicate with each other if you can't trust who's actually on the other end of the line? And the same with Gabriel as well. Like he was a much more formidable villain, I think, in the first one, actually, like pulling some strings and, like you said, killing the love interest. He had an impact. He was kind of like, he was an also there kind of person. So yeah, I think that contributed to the boring as well a little bit. Just that there was no actual like real villain.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree there. And obviously, you mentioned the stunts. The stunts, I think, is an interesting topic. I find this a very interesting topic. I think because on one hand, I was giving you this story, what is it, Commode and Mayo, I think it is, or
Yeah.
yeah. I was watching their review of Thunderbolts, and he was talking about how when he went to go and see Thunderbolts, and he saw Florence Pugh at the beginning of the movie do that stunt, he thought it was just CGI, and then someone informed him afterwards that it was real, and that kind of changed his perspective. It's interesting because when you look at these Mission Impossible movies, I think part of the marketing is that they want you as the audience to know that Tom Cruise is doing these stunts himself. And that's a good thing because I do think that it adds another dynamic and element to this. Obviously, in Dead Reckoning, the big stunt was, the motorbike off the cliff into the parachute, right? And in this one, you have two, but specifically the main stunt in this one is obviously not to spoil. You've kind of seen it a bit in the trailer, but is a plane sequence that is the main stunt that that he committed to and did. Obviously, there's a stellar underwater stunt sequence as well. But obviously, that was a bit different because it's not like like he actually went into the depths of the Arctic and actually went submerged himself to these depths. You know, they
Oh,
kind of
what,
they
Tom?
worked a bit of movie magic, but still, even so, they still had Tom Cruise. You know, they still him and Chris McQuarrie still did recreate, you know, the sets and the conditions, and that is really cool. The stunts, they are the bread and butter of this movie. They do stand out. It is when it, as I said at the beginning, when it's classic Mission Impossible, the stunts, the countdown is going down. It's down to the wire. No pun intended. That's when it's classic Mission Impossible. That's when it feels amazing. But unfortunately, those moments, they are a bit few and far between in this movie because there are two main ones, and it's a 2 hour and 50 minute movie. And so, you know, and that is unfortunate. But what was your opinion? Obviously, those two big set pieces, you know, the stunts in general from this movie.
I really liked the underwater stunt. I think that was a really cool sequence. Like just the set as well, just the submarine set, but also just the depths of water, which are very scary. And then, you know, all the things that go wrong. And I love that shot, especially in IMAX. I think that's where the film used the IMAX really, where he like comes up almost to the surface, and you see like the ice and the blue of the ice, and floating up, and there's like this huge space where he's just this tiny thing. I think they could have used it a little. With the plane stunt, I feel like we got two. He's first on that red plane with the random, I guess it was a random guy, I can't remember now.
Yeah.
And then on the other plane with Gabriel on the yellow plane. So it feels like we got the same stunt twice, which kind of took it out of the second time. I think it made it a little bit less effective, I guess. It was a bit different, obviously, both times. But yeah, it's kind of like, oh, he's dangling off a plane again. So yeah, I think my favorite was the underwater one.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing about the underwater one, because this is obviously as a spoiler review. Um, my issue with the underwater one is how it ends. You know, we explained this, or we had this conversation about this obviously after the movie, but you know, once he gets off this submersible, you know, and he's basically I guess the current is kind of blasting him up towards the surface, and you know, he rips open his, you know, I'll just call it a wetsuit, and he takes off the mask. As soon as he takes off the mask, it's like, bro, this isn't believable. Like, you had me. This was a stellar sequence up to that point. As soon as he takes off the suit, but specifically the mask, it's like, I can't believe you would survive this. And I know this is Mission Impossible, but Mission Impossible, like relatively actually, and I think this does have to do with the fact that they do their own stunts, right? Or Tom has been doing his own stunts. Because he's doing his own stunts, a lot of these stunts are a bit more, even though they're crazy, they're actually kind of believable because he's doing them. But
Yeah.
as soon as this, but like, for example, I remember a few movies ago, you know, he climbed, I think it was the tallest building in the world, right? Or one of the tallest buildings. I can't remember what movie that was. But it's like, I can't believe that. And I know he didn't film this part for real, but him taking off the mask at these depths in the water, it's like, I can't believe that you could have just, why? And yeah, I mean, but I guess what can you do? You know, what can you do?
I was wrapped up, I think, enough at that point just to go with it. Because, yeah, I mean, he did have a length to go back to the surface. Um, so without suit, without oxygen, without anything. But it's also Tom Cruise. I think he like can hold his breath underwater for 6 minutes, and I don't know how long it takes to get from down there to the surface again. I don't know. Maybe it's possible. For him, for Ethan. But yeah. Since we're kind of on the good parts, I guess maybe one last point for me is the other callbacks. The callbacks are kind of left us with the story, like when William Donloe comes back, the guy from the first film, where Ethan steals the knock list, and he's the guy like coming in, or he's the CEO of the knock list or whatever, the analyst. Like he makes a return, so that was a nice thing. At first, I like didn't recognize him. I just knew that I knew him from somewhere. And then it became clearer once the dialogue helped out a little bit who he was.
Mm.
So that's all I needed, really. I didn't need like flashbacks and little clips of John Voight or something to remind me who these people were. And also when he like gives Ethan the knife back that like was stuck in the desk at the end of that sequence in the first film, I thought that was a really cool callback. And the idea that he just kept this all those years. So a little more of that, I think, for me, maybe.
Yeah.
Should have done that. Yeah.
Well,
No,
I mean,
his relationship
no.
and him and his wife, just like they were nice little additions, I think, to the team. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing as well. Obviously, you're talking about, or alluding to. You mentioned a little bit more on the topic of little bit more. I am wondering. Obviously, this is a spoiler review. This is a spoiler for the ending of the movie, so you've been warned. Tom Cruise does survive. Ethan does survive. He doesn't die. He does end up capturing the entity and becoming essentially the guardian of the entity. And I guess the question is, I think, look, I know this is being touted as the final one. I think that if this was being touted as the final one, you would. I think that you should have just been ballsy and killed off Ethan. But I think that you not killing off Ethan is indication to me enough that you would consider returning to this franchise. I know that this is being kind of touted as the final one. I think that the way this movie ends, the team is intact, bar one. I think this very much so. Yeah, I think that this very much so can lead to another movie. I think, and I'll even dare say that I think another one will get done. And not just another one in general, I mean, or a reboot, I mean, as in Tom Cruise, I think will return. I think that's going to happen. And I think as well, like one of my criticisms of it too is that, this is a movie that came to mind, right? And I'm going to harken back to The Dark Knight Rises of all movies, right? And the reason why is because regardless of what you think about that movie, right? Christopher Nolan's aim in telling that story is that the end of the story is that Bruce was going to find peace, right? That he was going to realize that he could actually live a life not as Batman. And it was kind of a beautiful ending in many ways, regardless of the criticisms, that the fact that Bruce maybe finally found peace, he finally found a way out. I don't really get what the resolution here was for Ethan. It just felt like another day at the office, and by the time the movie ends, to be honest with you, feels like he will be waiting for the next job. And that's why I think we will see the next job. And so I guess my speculation at this point is, will there be another one? I'll be intrigued to see how well this one does, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Dead Reckoning didn't perform as well as they thought it was going to. It did underperform. And so I am intrigued to see how much this one does. I think if it does around the same amount, we can safely say that the end is here. But if it overperforms, then I think that we could see another one later on down the line.
I don't know if Tom Cruise must be ready to move on. He's also 62. He turned 63 this year. He's getting on a bit. I think he might be ready to just move on, do a couple of dramas again or something like that. A little bit more sit down work.
I mean, keep in mind that he has said that him and Chris McQuarrie have like 4 movies lined up. And so he's not slowing down. He's not slowing down. He said they've got 4 movies lined up. He's not slowing down. A big part of actually the press for this movie is him talking about that he will make movies like this till the day he dies. And that this is what he does. And so
might be the next movie if he keeps.
I mean, and so I don't think we're done here. I mean, regardless of what he does next, if him and Chris are teaming up again, we know where we're headed, I think.
But Christopher McQuarrie, like one of his favorite films of mine is The Usual Suspects. So he can do stuff that isn't action. He can do other things as well. Maybe even better. So I wouldn't mind seeing Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie, damn that name, teaming up for like a different kind of spy thriller. Like a little bit more heady than running around and or
Yeah.
anything really that's a bit more crimey or something like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I got you there. I got you. I mean, any final thoughts before we go to our icy review score for this movie?
One more. I loved For Those We'll Never Meet. That is a really
Mm.
good like motto. I love that, I
It
think.
is.
It's one I will remember because it's like their responsibility for the next generation. I suppose is what that means. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of he does that he keeps doing it for the next generation, for those uh, that might not be there right now, but might need a world maybe to grow up in and go into. I'll stop.
Aw, I think that's a beautiful way to end off this review, I think. I think that is a beautiful way to end off this review. I mean, I really think it is. And I think on that note, we should go to our icy
Yes,
review
please.
scores for this movie for those who will never meet. What is your icy review score? How many ices out of 10 will you give Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning?
I give it a 7 out of 10. Like the story picked up a lot until that amazing finale. But it was a bit slow at the beginning. There were some things that didn't work for me. But the stunts were great, and the ensemble was fun, and really grown to love them over the years. So yeah, 7 out of 10 ICs from me.
This is a tough one for me. But as of right now, okay, fine. I'll go with 7 ICs out of 10 as well. I was very much so considering 6.5 ICs out of 10. I really was. And I think because it did drag a lot at times, but yeah,
Mm.
there were some moments and the stunts that I guess can salvage it. And I do think this is a movie you should enjoy in the cinema, and should watch in the cinema. And I think for that, I'll go with 7 ICs out of 10, but it's just there. It's only just touching 7 ICs out of 10, if I'm being honest with you. But we will both go with 7 ICs out of 10. So that will do it for our review of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Once again, we are No Drama, Just Movies. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like, comment, share, drop down in the comment section below. Let us know your thoughts on this movie and what you think the future of this franchise will be. Once again, my name is Cameron. Tom Cruise has perfected the art of running, Kelly Smith, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague here.
I'm doing it now. I'm Phil Disavowed Corwin.
Oh, disavowed is right. Once again, we are No Drama, Just Movies. Thank you very much for checking out our review today, guys, and we will see you very, very soon. Take care, guys.
I'm gonna dangle off a high thing now.